Welcome again to another episode of Jason's Game Room, the only podcast on YouTube that talks about everything gaming, from video games to board games, card games, dice games, Dungeons and Dragons. If it's gaming, it's on this channel, so you're going to want to keep tuning in. Anyways, today I'd like to talk to you about some of the different expansions in the card game Magic the Gathering and things that have been said about them over the years, critiques, issues, things like that. As you may have well known, Magic the Gathering has been around since 1993, and there have been many expansions since the game first came out. Some of them have been highly praised by players, some have not, and I think some of the expansions have a bad rap for no reason. When the original core set came out, it was quite a thing to behold because it was a unique game at the time. Still pretty much is, but there's been a lot of copycats. Anyways, the core set was awesome. It brought us some great cards like the Moxes, Black Lotus, power cards other than those. And when the expansions first started coming out, nobody really knew how long Magic the Gathering would last. And by the fifth expansion, it almost died, but it kept going, and it turned into the powerhouse that it is today. And the first few expansions were nothing special to behold, and I'm talking about Arabian Nights, Antiquities, and Legends. They were okay, but nothing stood out about them. Then the fifth expansion came about, which was Fallen Empires, and a lot of people have given Fallen Empires a bad rap. They say it was the worst expansion for Magic to have ever come out. I disagree with that. I rate Fallen Empires the same as the four expansions that came before it, that it was okay, but it was nothing notable about it. There were some interesting cards in Fallen Empires, nothing to write home about, but I don't see it as a bad expansion. I don't see why so many people were down on it and why it contributed to a very quick downfall of Magic the Gathering before it came back up again. And in my original set of Magic the Gathering, I had a lot of cards from Fallen Empires and I put them in decks and I didn't have much of a problem. A lot of them were easily defeated per se, but they weren't bad cards. This all changed, of course, in June of 1995 when Ice Age came out. And in my humble opinion, Ice Age was one of the best expansions for Magic the Gathering to come out. So many new cards, so many awesome cards. It was like a whole new world unto itself. And unlike the first 5 expansions, this one was like could almost be considered a standalone because it had 60 card starter decks as well as the 15 card expansion packs. And it also started off the Ice Age block, which included Alliances and Cold Snap, which came much later. And I still have a lot of Ice Age cards in my set today that I have spread out into decks and extra cards. They still come in handy in constructed decks today. And I still consider Ice Age to be the best expansion for Magic. And that's saying a lot because of all the expansions that have come out over the years. A lot of new players out there who have only been playing, say, in the last 10 years, they'll never know some of the great expansions that came out like Ice Age. Some young players have gone back and explored the older expansions, or as I call them, older expansions now, even though I grew up with them. And you do see some of the young kids playing with them, but not as many. Moving right along from that, I think one of the pain in the ass expansions, as much as I like it, Mirage, which came out in 1996, that was a big pain in the ass of an expansion because it introduced so many cards with counters. And one of the few things that really pisses me off about Magic the Gathering is counters. And thanks to Mirage, so many cards with counters came out and made a mess of things. You know how many goddamn dice I had to start keeping in my card box for games after Mirage came out? It's ridiculous. Now, in the rest of the Mirage block with Visions and Weatherlight, they weren't as bad with the counters, but it was maddening to see so many cards with counters come out in that set. And Mirage was a great expansion that had a lot of good cards, but the freaking counters were just ridiculous. I honestly don't understand why it was necessary to start using that many counters. Once you get past that block, you get to you go past Tempest, Stronghold, and Exodus. I really didn't find them out of the ordinary. I found those 3 expansions relatively boring. One of my favorite expansions, aside from Ice Age, was the Artifact Cycle, which was Urza's Saga, Urza's Legacy, and Urza's Destiny. There were some very interesting cards in those expansions. And there was also the Unglued that came out, I think, around the same time, which had all those funny cards that were never meant for tournament play, but when you put them into house rules, they were hilarious. Because just some of the cards in there, like matching whatever the color of the person's shirt that you're playing against towards the card and in play, it was just hilarious. As the expansions progressed from there, I didn't buy much after that. I believe I started buying some random packages here and there from Maraudon and Cold Snap. I don't think I got past that. Maybe Morningtide. I bought a couple packs for no reason. It's hard because the expansions for Magic came out so fast and so furious. And you're into a lot of money at some point. So it's hard to pick and choose which expansions you want to buy from. But at the very beginning when Magic came out, as I was mentioning earlier, those first 6 or 7 expansions, even up to Mirage, were a must if you were serious about playing. But once they changed over the card design after 10th edition, I really stopped paying attention to Magic at that point because I was happy with the core set and I didn't really want to go past that into the newer stuff. In my opinion, they change it a little too often and the changes were too big. They got away from the original type cards and the card designs, and it wasn't the same after that. So I've been staying in those, like I've bought some newer cards mainly just for mana because you can get the newer card types of mana really cheap on the internet, but I don't know. I think Magic has gotten away from itself over the years. I think if they would have stick with the original format of cards and the original card design and kept up with the expansions in that light, it might have been a lot better. One of the few standalone type sets that came out over the years that was very exciting, that I enjoyed, was Portal. And if you're not familiar or if you can't remember what Portal was like, Portal came in a prepackaged box with 2 pre-made decks, different colors of course, a mat, and some other accessories, all in a little box. And I did have the original Portal box set way back. I honestly don't remember what happened to it because I did keep the mat and the box and everything it came in, and it disappeared over time. I'm not sure why, because I do remember hanging on to that, but it disappeared. Portal was cool because if you had never played Magic up to that point, you could buy that starter box and immediately play. Like, the decks were small, but you and a buddy could each take a deck, take it out of the box, put the playmat down, and you're instantly playing Magic the Gathering. And it had the rule set printed on there as well. And it was an easy thing to play. Portal, the expansion, was pretty decent. There was a lot of good cards, and of course you could mix up the Portal cards with other cards if you wanted to, obviously. But I think that was a step in the right direction at the time. And it was a shame they didn't expand on it and maybe create a series of these 2-player Portal games, and maybe with the same type of box and playmat area, and maybe reissue it as a new type of expansion, but a standalone 2-player game every time. I really enjoyed that. It's almost like what Decipher did with the sealed decks in the Star Trek and Star Wars card games. But Portal was much easier to get into than you could with most sealed decks from most other card games. Um, the highs, the lows, and the downright dirty. It's tough to do one on this. Again, there are people that are going to tell you that Fallen Empires was shit, and they're going to want that to be the lows, but I don't see a reason to consider it shit. The highs, it's very simple. Expansions like Ice Age, even Mirage, and Portal, I would say. Those are your highs. I can never get over how awesome Ice Age is. The lows, Mirage falls in there again because of the damn counters. Like, I honestly, to this day, do not believe that those counters were necessary in that fashion and that many of them. The downright dirty, I can't really give you a downright dirty for this because Magic and its expansions went pretty well after a certain point. As I mentioned before, changing the card design and going in a different direction for expansions was a bit weird, but I can't really consider it downright dirty. Yeah, that's about as much as I got for the downright dirty, which is practically nothing. What I would suggest to people, if you can find it, and you can get them on eBay, they're not cheap, but seriously invest in either the 5th edition or 6th edition starter packs. That was a good core set with extra cards, and they play well with just about everything else. Or if you can get your hands on Ice Age, go for it. Because you'll never find a better card set in Magic than Ice Age. And I'm going to keep singing those praises forever because it was one of my favorites. I've actually kept 2 of the plastic packages that Ice Age came in because it's just so awesome. Anyways, that is all for today. Thank you for tuning into the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell all your friends. And I'll be back here once again in the future with another episode. Everybody have a great day and game on!